Okay, don't eat.
Cool, thank you.
All right. So let's set our minds into a positive motivation. We made the effort to show up tonight. So that's meritorious right there. Yay. We can rejoice in that. We can rejoice in the fact that we have a human body still, at least in this moment. And we're using it to its best, this is the best kind of thing to do with our precious human rebirth, is to show up to a Dharma class. I mean, this is how we'll finally get liberated from the sufferings of samsara. So we want to try to generate a motivation that wants to keep doing this. So, that we're showing up to keep working on our minds in order to progress along the path, in order to benefit those around us, in order to quickly become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. How fortunate we are. I was speaking to I have a Zoom call with nuns on Mondays, and we were talking about how even in countries that used to be predominantly Buddhist, in China, they're not allowed to practice Buddhism freely. In Vietnam, you're not allowed to practice Buddhism freely, so there are all sorts of restrictions. And so this is this can change, So we want to rejoice in our good fortune that we are allowed to follow our religious tradition, explore other religious traditions, but that can change. So we can have compassion for all those who are not allowed to freely practice their traditions. And just keep in mind that that's some of the people we practice for. I will recite the 7-limb prayer. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clams of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. Dedicate my own merits and those of all others to great enlightenment. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, I become a Buddha in order to benefit all beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So I thought one of the things that I keep meaning to do this, but instead I just run my mouth and I forget. Um, me. So one of the tools that can be very helpful, um, there's an old little booklet called Lamrim Outlines, a beginner's meditation guide, by Karen Valem. She's a nun that has lived in Copan forever. Um, and what's nice about it is it's like a cheat sheet for studying for a Lamrim test or something, because it's got all the um, it's, let me see if I can. This is what it looks like on the outside, you know. But it has things, it has a list of things, the usefulness of or the difficulty of attaining a precious human rebirth, and then it has a little, how do you meditate on this kind of thing. And then so that if you even just read this booklet, you go through the whole path. I mean, so you like in a couple of weeks, you can, it's just like you don't, and it helps you get familiar with the whole path, and then it can help you see the big picture of what, where we start, where we're going. And of course, everybody starts in a different place, because of past lives experience, this life experience, whatever teachings you've had, what you have already created some habits for. So some things you pick up really easily, or they make sense to you pretty easily. Other things, not so much. You have to work a little harder at that. But it just really helps if you remind yourself of all the steps on the path on a regular basis, because we can get caught by just one piece and just keep, what's the word?
Obsessed.
Ruminating?
You ruminate again and again. Yes, obsess over it. This is
Habituate.
habituate. Yes, but of course, if we're doing that with the feeling like I cannot go to the next step until I have a realization of this step, that's not how it works. It's not linear. It's a, the more familiar we are with the whole path, the more likely it is we'll have some sort of understanding, because some piece over here will inform us about some piece over here. And it just gets, all of a sudden something will resonate with you in a new way. And this is part of the reason why teachers recommend that you memorize something like a foundation of all good qualities, or a little very, very brief view of the whole path. Because we need to be familiar with the whole path. It's not just part of it, but we get hooked. It's like most conversations, in a discussion group end up on karma. Almost always, they end up on karma because everybody's kind of, like that's the main point. And it is a main point. We really want to get cause and effect and the dependent arising, all that stuff. But only a Buddha can understand all the workings of karma. So getting really hooked into, but I couldn't have possibly created the cause for this, is kind of a futile exercise, Someday you will know how you, but it's a natural, I understand why we do it, So it's just, so anyway, so I highly recommend something like this.
What was the name of the book again? Extend?
This is Extended Lam Rim Outlines, a beginner's meditation guide by Karen, Karin Valham, I think. You probably can get it from the FPMT shop.fpmt. It'll be online. I mean, you can't, so occasionally we have one in the library. Occasionally, but it'll disappear for a while. So like, if you haven't done death meditations are very helpful for what?
I heard that it's the best thing for getting motivated.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the disadvantage of not remembering death at all times is that you won't remember the Dharma. Or even if you do remember it, you postpone your practice. So they have this simple little death meditation, death is certain. The time of death is uncertain. Only the Dharma helps at the time of death. And then it tells you the logic behind that. And then it tells you what conclusion you might want to come to if you think about it this way. So it tells you how to meditate on these subjects, but it also just gets you more familiar with thinking about these subjects.
Is this in a particular book?
Yes, it's in the Extended Lam Rim Outlines.
Oh, in the same book?
It's these are all in the same book.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I went through and bookmarked because the table of contents is not very informative, So I went and highlighted, so I could easily get to the things of interest. So Jean's not here tonight. She wanted to know about the dissolution of death meditation. So when she shows up next, we'll go over that, but it's in here. So this little very short thing about, if your goal is to have a good rebirth, these are the things that are helpful to meditate on, to have realizations of, The main thing, of course, is ethics, because that's what creates the cause for human rebirth. So abandoning the non-virtues and adopting virtues. Remembering death, so you'll practice now, not put it off. As you understand dependent arising, the law of causality, cause and effect. Yeah.
It always says a higher rebirth as a human or a god. I understand that a god is a pleasurable rebirth, but ultimately you're burning your merit.
So who is this for? Who is this advice for? Which is goal is what?
Better rebirth.
Right. So a god is a better rebirth if you don't want to suffer. If you want to become enlightened, that's not what you want to do. See, this is my point about knowing the whole path.
Even if I want a better rebirth, I'd rather be reborn in a precious human rebirth.
Some people wouldn't, though. Some people don't want the suffering of the human rebirth.
Fair enough.
We have to know where people are. If someone's just tired of suffering,
That's a good rebirth.
They just want to go rebirth. It's not easy to have a God realm rebirth. So, you know, it's basically you have to do all the same things that you need to do to have any good rebirth, right? Only without a Dharma motivation. Because you have to only practice positive actions. You have to abandon negative actions because that's what lands you in the lower realms. You know, you have to be generous, be patient, be compassionate, be kind, all those kind of things. But as we talked about before, if you're generous with a selfish motivation, you still create the cause for resources because it's just simple cause and effect. If you want Dharma resources, you need to be practicing, with the motivation of truly wanting to benefit, that it has nothing to do with you, all that kind of stuff. You were generous with Dharma centers so that they exist, that kind of thing. So it's just, your directive with your generosity. You use wisdom with your generosity. Then if your goal is to be, you finally gotten it, what do you need to finally get it to want to be liberated?
Are you tired of samsara? Tired of the
Yeah,
suffering of samsara?
yep. We need to see the faults of existence.
You do what?
To see the faults of cyclic existence. We have to become disenchanted with samsara.
I don't know why everybody isn't on board. 'Cause you know what I mean? Like, who wants to keep going over this over and over?
Because they don't believe in rebirth. That's part of it.
People get caught up in drama and they think that that's what life is all about.
Well, or if they're successful. And it's just look at the whole world. The whole world is trying to better their some circumstances now.
Your external circle.
Yeah. So to really move to that next level of being really wanting to get out of samsara, you have to become disenchanted with the delights of samsara. You have to see them for what they are, which is the suffering of change. So you need to get involved in really understanding the truth of suffering and the causes of suffering. And it's this developing renunciation. Like we as people who are aiming for full enlightenment, we're focusing on bodhicitta. Well, bodhicitta is it assumes renunciation because samsara is not gonna help you become enlightened, and liberation's not enough. So that means really every time something delightful happens, first of all, you want to rejoice in the cause of it. So what's the cause of it?
Merit.
Hmm?
Good merit,
Good merit. What is good merit created by?
good action.
Good actions. So instead of just thinking, ooh, this was good luck, and also we just don't, we really want to think, oh, I want to repeat that action, and not because it gives me this pleasant experience, but because you tie enough of them together. First of all, they'll give you a good rebirth, and then if you want to become fully enlightened, this is how you have to go about it. But we don't want to waste. I mean, sometimes you have to think about yourself and think about, do I really want to waste the ripening my good karma on a new car? I have the money for it. Is that how I want to spend it? Do you want to fritter it away with, lattes every day? whatever. I mean, I'm not picking on anybody, but it's just, but this is the way you want to start thinking, is what is the best use of my resources for me to get enlightened? And we all have things we have to take care of. You know, we have to support ourselves. We have to, you know, because that's part of our shared responsibility as being part of a community. You know, we have to do stuff, you know, in order to eat, in order to have shelter, in order to participate in society, all those kind of things, you know. But beyond that, then we really want to think about, first of all, you want to think about how much time am I spending in order to accumulate more resources in order to buy more resources? And is my time being used in a good direction? Because there are lots of jobs in the world, you know, and some, you know, they benefit, you know, this life, others not so much. Does that make sense? So these are kind of things. Can't do anything about what we've done in the past, you know, I mean, that's, you know, we can't do anything about, but we just want to be able to not only just think about what we do tomorrow, but also our aspirational prayers for the next life. You know, so we are in the habit of thinking, you know, may I have, you know, lots of resources so that I can support the Dharma, so that I can be supported in the Dharma, you know, whatever. And that all the pleasant ripenings of past positive actions exhaust our karma, our good karma. Which is why we want to respond to the ripening of our negative karma with rejoicing. Yay! May I not repeat this mistake. Whatever it was. So, you know, does that make sense? Does it not make sense to somebody? Yeah.
The one thing that I'm still struggling with is understanding the disenchantment phase. Because I feel like
Disenchantment, what?
disenchantment phase of rejecting samsara. And I feel like it's not emptiness. You're not like, oh, there's nothing there.
No, there are suffering sentient beings there.
Yeah, it's like, what do I shift my like focus on, I guess, when I'm like, I realize that samsara, I have certain understandings of it,
Okay.
but I just feel like then what's the point? Like I get to that place where it's like, what's the point? And
The point is that you can end this kind of suffering, and then you can help others learn how to end this kind of suffering. That this is totally not necessary. We will still exist, and will exist in a state of bliss.
so that becomes your reality, your new
Yeah,
reality
that's what enlightenment
is serving that purpose, or that single pointed direction is the ending the cycle.
Yeah, first you get liberated. Okay, and then you need, which means you're no longer subject to uncontrolled birth and death in cyclic existence. Okay, you have to realize emptiness in order to do that. You have to perfect that realization of emptiness in order to do that. Okay, and then you don't take rebirth. You choose where, you know, whatever. Most people sit in nirvana for a little while, and then the Buddhists have to remind you there's more work to do. You know, because it's really a nice, pleasant place to be. You know, but you haven't completely freed your mind from just that the taint of having been habituated to negativities and ignorance for eons. You know, so in order to be able to become omniscient and benefit all sentient beings, you have to remove that taint. So there's a little more work to do, and then you can become completely enlightened. It's, yeah.
I think what I was getting at was maybe this like fear response to the emptiness that I feel now, looking at things that used to have meaning to me that don't have meaning at all anymore.
Right.
I'm just like trying to grasp at something else, I guess.
Right.
So
I get that part.
I'm like, I don't want to grasp with something else. So I'm trying to like train my mind to not.
What we need to understand is what we experience in samsara is being dictated by ignorance. All the good stuff, all the bad stuff, all of that is coming from a misunderstanding of how we exist. We still will exist when we're enlightened. The stuff of samsara will have no meaning to us. It's because it's totally not necessary. It's a result of ignorance. Now, we can't imagine what a state of existence is like when you remove all our pollution from our mind. Can't tell you, don't know. They describe it as bliss, and you experience everything directly. So that it's not that you're thinking it's blissful, it just is blissful. You know. So
That
that's,
makes sense.
yeah. And so it's not that we don't have to hate samsara. We just need to understand it is a total false appearance. And it will never bring us uncontaminated bliss. It can't. It's by its nature, it is the foundation of it is ignorance. So it doesn't mean you can't enjoy the things, you know, this is that difference between preference and grasping at what we want, you know, like. You know, we can have preferences, we can enjoy a cup of tea, we can enjoy the chocolate cake, we can enjoy sex, we can enjoy all those things. But as soon as we equate it with that's where happiness is, that's where suffering is, we're mistaken. That's just wrong. It's not true. And then in our habit of grasping after it and wanting more of it, that craving for it, and then when you find it, you know, getting totally sucked into it, it keeps that cycle of ignorance going. Because we've fallen for it again. Oh yeah, there is happiness there. There absolutely is happiness there. And that's the mistake. That actually, if we would get rid of all these conceptions and all this grasping, bliss would be our natural state. It's ignorance that is blocking us from that bliss. So you have to think a lot about it. So it's not so much, I mean, it's not about not enjoying things. It's just not thinking it's necessary for happiness. That's if you want true, lasting, everlasting bliss, grasping at these little sensory delights is never going to get you there. Yeah.
So renunciation is the first step to removing the obscurations and ignorance.
Renunciation is the recognition of the truth of suffering. And the truth and all types of the truth of suffering, you know, the truth, the suffering of, you know, the painful aspects, mental and physical, you know, the suffering of change, which we call pleasure, you know, the all pervasive nature of suffering and samsara. That's why samsara is not a state of peace. It's a nature of suffering. So renunciation is just, okay, I've had enough of this. But you may not have had any deeper realizations than that. That's a pretty big one.
That's
It's a, yeah, it's a big one. But it's like renunciation is where when you've actually had a real, you know, you have a real experience of renunciation, that gets you on a path. Bodhicitta, when you have a real experience of bodhicitta, that it's where it's you don't even have, it's effortless. It's not, it doesn't require any more thought. Your mind's just influenced by that mind that wishes to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. You've entered the Mahayana path. Yeah. And that's the beginning. So it's a big step. But so most of us aren't anywhere near the first step. You know, so it's a process. But you can't skip the pre-steps. We all have to start with, preschool. So, because that will get us there. Any other thoughts, questions? Because this is exactly what it takes, is to really, we have to see where our doubts are and keep working with it.
All pervasive suffering. I don't have a real good grasp of what that actually is.
It means that samsara itself is the nature of suffering. And as long as we are influenced by ignorance, there's no chance for anything to work out well. There's a part of us that grasps of this idea, if I can make things good enough.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, sorry, you're still going to die. Your kids are going to die. Your grandchildren are going to get hit by cars. All that's going to happen. And they'll suffer, not just from the physical, the fact that their bodies are impermanent, but they're going to have heartbreak and, longing and all those things, and some of it's very deep sorrow. It's not just, high school stuff. It's the sorrow of losing your best friend, the sorrow of losing a parent, the sorrow of losing a child, the sorrow. I mean, these are big deal griefs. The fact that your whole world can be obliterated due to war. I mean, I can't imagine what Gaza looks like now. I mean, I can see the pictures, but I just can't imagine what that experience is. It's like when I went back to New Orleans after Katrina. I was in Australia when Katrina happened. And when I went back to New Orleans, and I'm flying in, and all the roofs are blue with the blue tarp. And then to get from my folks' house into the city, we drove through where it was all flooded. And it just looked like one of those, which I don't think it actually exists. I forgot what we call it. The kind of bomb that could explode and just kill the people.
Oh, a neutron bomb?
Yeah, neutron. Because, you saw silt. Silt was all over everything. There were cars just in the street because they'd floated to the most. And all the buildings had that cross hash mark, that no survivors or, no dead people, it's been checked. Then you saw the water line, was really high up, way above the door, and all that kind of stuff. And you think about, and it was really, depressing. It's like, and there were no people living there because they couldn't live there. And I didn't see it when there was, a whole walls of refrigerators out to be picked up. All the trash, all the houses had been emptied by the time I got there of all the stuff that had to be carted away, So I missed that part. But so I can't even begin to imagine what a place like Gaza must look like for the people who live there when, everything's in rubble and they're still digging for bodies. I just can't even imagine. That's the sufferings of samsara. That's what we're all in danger of experiencing from life to life. Just depends on, what ripens at the time of death and what kind of rebirth you have. And we've all been there many times. So if we don't want to repeat that horror, we need to get out. And we need to help other people get out. And the only way to do that is to perfect our wisdom and quit being seduced by the sensory pleasures of samsara. We pay a heavy, heavy price for our ignorance. So that's the idea behind the all-pervasive nature of samsara. It'll never be good. It's the nature, so that's what its meaning is. So even in the God realms, where all you're doing is using, exhausting your good karma for, I don't know, I think 1,000 years. I've forgotten what the lifespan is in the God realms. But then the last week of your life, which is longer than our weeks, everything, all that good karma stops. And you start to deteriorate. And you lose all your friends because now you kind of aren't attractive and you're kind of smelly and and you know it's happening. So you lose everything. And since you've exhausted all this good karma for this lifespan, guess where you go? To the lower realms. So are we now depressed?
Why would you choose to go there?
People who don't fully understand the samsara. They're still enchanted with the delights of samsara and they want more of them. And the God realms will give you that.
Of course.
And we've all been there. So we don't have to say, oh, well, they're idiots. No, we've been there. We've been everywhere we can get in samsara. We just haven't become liberated. We've developed karma binding. We've reached the absorption of peak of existence, all that stuff. We've had eons, beginningless time. So this takes a lot of reflection. For me, I have to, the main thing, I began with was just the obvious suffering, in the world, and just how, wow, we all experience it in some form, and then some people seem to experience every hour, and it just sucks. All I've got to say about that. So then we need to know, how do you get liberated? You have to really understand dependent arising. You have to really understand the 12 links of dependent arising, how we keep cycling. So we need to understand that the moment of death is very important. And then we need to remember that since you can't really control the moment of death, you want to develop a habit of mind that is conducive to a good rebirth, so that it's likely to be the mind you have at the time of death, no matter when death comes. We need to abandon the attachment for the pleasures of cyclic existence. That doesn't say we have to not have any. We just have to have no attachment. And that's a big, big ask. That's not easy to do. It's much easier to do the more and more you reflect on it and see how it's just a seduction. It's just, it's the trap we create in our own heads about, oh, nothing wrong with craving as long as you get what you want. So even like your loved ones, when you think about your loved ones, I mean, like, I can think about in your case, with grandchildren, just like, oh, you want the best for them. Well, the best for them was that they have enough suffering to decide this isn't the answer. I want a different answer to this puzzle. They have enough good resources, but enough suffering to want to look for a solution. That's why it's a precious human rebirth. That's why it's not a precious God rebirth. Because we have a mixture of enough. We're not just having to survive. We're not just having to, make sure we don't get hit by the next bomb, or we have enough food, all that kind of stuff. But we have some suffering. And that can generate that desire to get out of suffering. That makes sense. So you need ethics, concentration, and wisdom. Because to get out of samsara, to just be liberated, you have to have a realization of emptiness. Because that's the key.
So obviously, killing yourself is not the way out.
No, it's in fact probably pretty bad.
It's an ignorance, I guess. So the antidote to that kind of state of mind would be the wisdom to know that it's ignorant.
Obviously, if someone is mentally ill, they may not have the means they may not have a perfect human rebirth because they have something's wrong with their body or mind or brain or whatever, so that's one. So then, you really can't, you can help them get through, that moment, and hopefully they have some tools they develop to get through that moment. But thinking that you can escape samsara just by killing yourself or escape the war zone just by walking in front of the bomb, that none of that works because you haven't created the cause to get out of samsara. And if your mind's really angry, really, depression can often be quite a lot of self-absorption. You're just unhappy because you're not pleased with anything that life is giving you. That's not a good mind to die with.
Is that mental illness? Is that like a ripening of bad karma? What is that
Well,
exactly?
if you, as Lama Yeshe says, we're all mentally ill. It's just a matter of degree.
Yeah.
And the ignorance is making us mentally ill. But you have to be functional to be able to work with the Dharma. So, it's a matter of degree. Like if somebody discovers the Dharma, even though they also have this issue with depression, say, early in life, they may be able to work with that illness, and still work with the Dharma, and have a good rebirth. But so it just depends on the degree. Someone who's hallucinating, hearing voices, who has all the time, or catatonic, there may not be a chance. But it's like in the monasteries, they don't kick someone out because they've developed a mental illness. They just take care of them. And they don't have expectations of them. And we're all, if we really look at our minds and really look at what we're trying to transform, you'll see how mentally ill you are. It's like, it's all those things. What Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different result. Oh, me and chocolate cake have that relationship. It's just a matter of degree. Throwing temper tantrums in your head because you think, you should be able to get what you want. This should work out. It's not understanding the teachings at all. Things don't work out in samsara. You have good karma ripening and you have negative karma ripening. And that's the most you can hope for. This is why we do purification practice. So we can take the mistakes we make and keep those seeds from being able to produce a result. And that takes a very powerful mind. So we have to be habituated to doing, doing our 4 opponent powers every night, then doing our rejoicing so that we're encouraged to do good things in the future. We have to really start to investigate, why is something a non-virtue? Why does it lead us to further suffering? And that applies to both things we like and things that we don't like. They're both traps. So it's not like we can skip the steps that you need to have a good rebirth. If we're lucky enough to be enlightened in this very life, the way we get there is still with steps. We need to be practicing ethics. We need to be able developing wisdom. We need to have a realization of emptiness, all those things. So it's not like the steps are different. The goal is different. It's you've already developed this wish to become completely enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. But most of us don't have uncontrived bodhicitta. It's effortful bodhicitta. And we have to think about it. Then we have to remember to think about it. Then we have to try to work on meaning it, because it's hard work to becoming completely enlightened. Giving up attachment's not easy.
When somebody pushes my button, bodhicitta, it's hard.
Yes, because we don't really have it. Because we still think there's something to be gained by letting someone know they're not giving us what we want.
Yes.
Because happiness is out there, So we need to be so habituated to noticing the illogic of the way we're thinking or behaving that we can catch it sooner and sooner and sooner, and it loses all of its appeal. And that takes a lot of reflection. And this is why reading a description of these, of the path helps us just have that recall of the different things to keep in mind. So trying to develop bodhicitta, that's why we have to really become familiar with, equalizing self, equalizing and exchanging self for other, or seeing all sentient beings as our mothers and remembering their kindness, wanting to repay the kindness. We need to cultivate the mind that truly wishes all sentient beings to be happy, and then wishes them to be free of suffering. So that means we have to develop affection for everyone. And the only way to do that is to really be able to have that expansive view. It's, if they're an enemy in this life, they haven't always been. You have good conditions in this life, you haven't always. Because we tend to look down on people who have really horrible circumstances, And we need to understand that that's just what ripened, that some lousy seed ripened at the time of death. And then you have to go, have I been working on that mind? What was it? Yanti Rinpoche recently said, I think it was Yanti Rinpoche, that instead of looking at it as having to work on your mind for the time of death, look at it as working on your mind for enlightenment. Because they're sort of the same thing. So the six perfections, which is what you're working on when you actually got this uncontrived bodhicitta, are no different than what we're doing now, because they're generosity, patience, ethics, all those things. It's just at a whole new level. It's more and more subtle. So in many ways, getting familiar with the whole path, it informs you how to have a good rebirth. It informs you about, how to get out of samsara. It's not, you have to save that until later. And then if you're fortunate enough to meet the tantric teachings and then you're ready for them, then you learn about how you create the cause for a form body of a Buddha. So what we concentrate for in sutra is how to create the mind of a Buddha. But in order to benefit others, you need a form body, because ordinary beings cannot see or experience a Buddha without a form body.
Well, if you're Buddha without a form body, can you work on it then?
No, they come together. You can't be a Buddha if you still have work to do.
Okay, so you're not a Buddha if you don't have, okay.
And of course, Arya Bodhisattvas can see the Sambhogakaya body of a Buddha, which is the one that looks like they're in the God realms, because that's what they look like in the God realms. I mean, that's the non-samsaric God, not the samsaric God realm. Sorry, that's what they look like in the Pure Lands when they're giving teachings to Arya Bodhisattvas. You know, we can't see them that way at all because it's a light body.
Do you have any idea of how many beings have been able to become enlightened?
They say there are enough. There are as many Buddhas. You can put a Buddha on every atom of existence. Yeah, we're the slow ones. That's what they say. And of course, enlightened beings don't take up any space. They pervade everything. Okay. So your main activity when you've gone beyond just wanting to be liberated, well, you have to see the faults of liberation, that it's not enough, that you want omniscience in order to be able to help all sentient beings. Because it's only with omniscience that you can know all the workings of karma, you know exactly where everybody is, you know all that stuff. Then you can unerring, I can't say that. Without mistake, you can help them. Each one. So even when you, obviously, if you're seeking liberation, part of your motivation is what?
To be liberated,
To escape samsara.
Why?
To escape samsara.
to stop suffering.
To stop suffering. That's a very personal reason. So it isn't until you have effortless bodhicitta that there's no self-cherishing, there's no self-interest involved anymore. You will still accomplish your own welfare because being liberated and becoming a complete Buddha, you won't have any suffering. You'll live in a state of bliss. That will be your experience 24/7. But it will just simply, and you don't think anymore. You don't have any conceptual thought anymore. You just experience everything directly. Just like right now, what we see is a direct experience of our, eye awareness. Buddhists experience everything that way. There's no, oh, that must be called red. And none of that. So it's an inconceivable state of mind. We can't imagine what this state of mind is like. But as you progress along the path, as you realize emptiness, or you develop, you're on the grounds of a bodhisattva, you will get closer to knowing what that's like. Because at certain levels of being a bodhisattva, you can just, as soon as you take someone else's mind, okay, I put Jack in my, I'll know your past lives. You don't have to wait to be a Buddha but to know everyone's all the time, all at once, simultaneously, all that stuff, you have to be a Buddha. So it's a difference between being able to help people at one at a time, so to speak, versus everyone. Also, you can emanate bodies.
I'm just going to ask you that.
It's like I think it's like first you can emanate 1,000, and then you can emanate 100,000,
What
and
does
then
that
you can.
mean?
That means you can make another body manifest somewhere else to help someone.
Oh.
Or a bridge, you know. I'm not sure about that. I know Buddhists can manifest as
At what
bridges.
stage can you start to,
I can't remember.
I'm just-
I'm pretty sure you'd have to have a realization of emptiness, although I don't know about that as far as emanations. But you may be able to do it at an inferential stage. We'd have to look it up. I can't remember. So it's good to get familiar with what's possible, just to encourage yourself that, because sometimes we just think it's not possible to be able to help all sentient beings. So you have to understand what resources are really at your disposal. It's like, first of all, your mind pervades everything. So there's nothing you don't know. And not only do you not, I mean, it's not even like you don't have, it's not a conceptual idea about it. You have a direct experience of all things.
And you can be in numberless universes.
Oh, yeah, the numberless universes, and you know all of them.
When you're at that point, you,
It's everything. All forms of samsara, you know directly because you pervade all sentient beings' minds. Doubt?
I had a question.
Yep.
So why would it be necessary for more than one Buddha to help others on the path? Because,
Have you seen your mind lately?
well, if they know everyone and they can, be in all these different places at the same time, why would there and be a need to?
I don't know that there necessarily is a need. I don't know there's necessarily a need. All I know is I can use all the help I can get. I really don't know. And I certainly don't want beings to quit becoming completely enlightened, because what I hear is it's a nice state of bliss. So we might as well get everybody there.
I could actually take up one whole Buddha.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is what's funny, is that it's just like, I have no idea, but I suspect it really isn't. It's not like how we experience samsara.
But when one becomes a Buddha and they're no longer part of samsara, do they exist as a individual entity, or are they? You said they're everywhere. So is it
It's
that
just a mind, remember, it's just a mind, so it's not physical.
that all minds, it's the same mind, like every Buddha,
Now, they have different histories.
but they all
have the same qualities.
they have the same access to awareness, information, and
Because mind is not physical, so they don't take up space. So all Buddha minds are everywhere. The only difference between one Buddha mind and another is history. History as a samsaric being. That's different.
I guess maybe that's why they can help, because different Buddhas have different histories and they can, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, and they make promises, to help particular types of beings in these particular types of circumstances when they're bodhisattvas.
yeah,
But mostly, they probably need a lot of Buddhas just because they can't do it for us. They can't get in our heads, even though they're there, and make us change. They don't have that power. Only we can change ourselves. So they have to constantly, and we have to create the cause to be helped by them, which we're not doing all the time. So, it's they're ready at all times to be upheld. And as soon as that condition is present, they'll help. But I'm sure it's not a matter of, like which Buddha or something. I can't conceive of, and this is the problem. This is one of those things, the rabbit hole you can get sucked down into, is a samsaric being cannot imagine what an enlightened mind is like. All you can imagine is what it would take to be able to help everyone. And omniscience seems like one of those, things. Check, we need that. The ability to manifest as anything. That could be extremely helpful. Okay. But these are good things. This is exactly the way we have to approach it. We have to look at it going, I don't know about this. And then we have to put certain things on the shelf because we just can't, we're not making any more progress. And we have to wait until we learn some other stuff. And then maybe that we'll make more progress in that arena. And bodhisattvas, as you have realizations, you will start to understand better. Like when you develop calm abiding, you develop some abilities of clairvoyance. So you'll start to remember some of your past lives. You'll be able to see other people's past lives. Not everybody, but so it's a process. And that you don't even have to be on a spiritual path to be able to do that. That's just that's what focus does for you, to be able to train your mind to focus on the object you choose. That gives you that ability. So if the object you choose is somebody else's past lives, and you're able to zero in on that. Now you can't zero in on a Buddha because you probably can't still see one. So. But bodhisattvas can see other bodhisattvas and know that they're other, bodhisattvas can tell if someone else is a bodhisattva. Arya bodhisattvas can tell if others are Arya bodhisattvas. And they can see Buddhas in the Pure Lands, in the Sambhogakaya form. There's no need to see a Buddha in just the enlightened mind form. There's no form there. So only Buddhas can experience that, the mind of other Buddhas. Okay. So like I said, so reading a Lamrim text or reading, again and again and again is helpful. I find this little book of meditations helpful because it's like someone's done the chart for you. Oh, here's the list. And it also has recommendations on how to meditate on it. And then eventually you don't need it. But you probably need it again when you go, I've been working on this a lot. I've kind of forgotten about this part, Okay. Is this helpful?
Very,
Absolutely.
very, very.
Okay. Just checking. I mean, it's helpful for me. So if y'all, I'm reviewing it, it's helpful for me.
That's the point.
How you doing at home? Good enough? All right. I'm going to share the death meditation, the disillusions at the time of death. Someone like that. Okay. So this is a description of what happens in the body as the body fails. And then what's going on with the mind as the body can no longer support consciousness. Okay. So it's recommended that we get familiar with what's happening so that we are not frightened. And so we can make use of the clear light at the time of death, which is when, well, I'll get there when we get there, okay? Okay. So it's recommended that at the beginning, you try to imagine you're on your deathbed. So you can just do this meditation anytime. You can be sitting in meditation and do this, okay? You can also do it if you fall asleep, unless you don't have a lot of time, because then you can't get through all the steps because you're already sleeping, or you can't afford to stay awake any longer because you need to get up early tomorrow, so. But once you're familiar with it, you can do it every night as you go to sleep, so, and that gets you more and more familiar with it. So one of those things that's helpful, though, is if you're just going to meditate on it, is to try to imagine that you're on your deathbed and that, you're past that point where you've been given the news that you're going to die soon. So, because one of the things about remembering death is, you can think about, like it's your turn at the doctor and the doctor goes, I'm sorry. Your test results are not good. So, okay. But one of the advantages of getting familiar with this process is that if you are in a car accident, if you have a sudden unexpected death, you still go through this process. It's just a matter of how rapid it is. So some people, go into a coma or something and die 3 weeks later, So they're going to be experiencing this process. So they talk in terms of our elements, the elements dissolving. So the first element to dissolve is the earth element, and that's our body. So I don't know if you've been around, if you've been around death much, but the body starts losing its power. It often becomes very thin. If someone's had a long-term illness, it can become very thin.
Everything dries up.
And everything dries up. That's the next one. That's when the water element dissolves. So dissolve is just a word. It's not like literal dissolving, but it means that the support that you receive from the earth element or the body element is failing. Okay. Your body becomes weak and powerless. And so this is akin, and you feel like you're sinking into the earth. So when you fall asleep, as you start to really fall asleep, you feel heavier in the bed, you're sinking into the bed. So you can use that as a cue, Your body becomes weak. You lose its luster. I remember I worked as a nurse's aide when I got out of high school. And I'd become friends with someone who was only like 30. And, I was 18 or something. So, and she had a heart attack one night. And so I watched them revive her, whatever you do, But I will never forget seeing how her skin just changed, and it loses its luster. That life force, when it's not there, it's kind of visible.
My mother's skin was like almost waxing.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
So since she didn't die,
No, she did die, but
yeah, I know she did.
oh, mine didn't. Mine died, but your friend didn't.
Yeah. So when she came back,
Right.
that luster came back in the sense that because now blood's flowing through the body and all that kind of stuff, wherever it comes from, They also say that the mirror-like wisdom dissolves. So each of our elements are associated with a type of wisdom. And so that the mirror-like wisdom's an awareness, right? This is a quality of our mind, right? It reflects like a mirror. You could lose the ability to control your eyes. So this is why some people die with their eyes open and some do not. When your earth element has ceased to support consciousness, there'll be an appearance of mirages, sort of that shimmery appearance. So when you recognize that, if you recognize, oh, I know what's going on, So some of this can just take your fear away. Okay. Because when you're going through this stage of death, this is the end. You will start seeing images of the bardo, of where you're going, that kind of thing. And it can be scary. So you want to be prepared for going, this is just the time of this, and not see it as a big deal and something to be afraid of. That takes familiarity, of really getting, familiar with the fact that we all die, this body fails all of us, that it's, no big deal, and you'll just be reborn. Don't be attached to this particular form. Don't be attached to your loved ones. It's sort of like, okay, my time's up. You'll have new loved ones, don't worry. When the earth element fails, then the water element is the main thing that's going on, and all your fluids dry up. And most of us see that as we age. It starts early. Now you no longer have the experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So your sense consciousnesses are failing. That basic wisdom equality. So that's the pleasure, pain, and neutral. Dissolve. So we're just no longer mindful of that. We're not being affected by pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral anymore. That's good news when you're dying, I guess. Your ear can no longer hear. And both external and inner sense. So like that sound of the ocean, that goes away. And then smoke appears. Then the fire element dissolves. Obviously, you can no longer digest. There's, no point of food. Your ability, the aggregate of discrimination, you no longer can, sense your loved ones or anything. You can no longer remember names. Your breath gets very weak. You can't smell. And when that is complete, you'll see like sparks, fire sparks, or firefly light, just, not like a dimming light, more of just flashes of light appear. And then the wind element dissolves. Now the wind element is responsible for movement. So this is when we stop breathing. And apparently we can't distinguish even tactile sensation. And the basic wisdom of achieving activities dissolves. You no longer, you just have no knowledge of the world anymore. This can happen quickly or slowly. All of these steps. The tongue gets thick and blue. And then you see the image of a fluttering, like light that's going out, like a flame that's going out, the blue kind of flame of a dying light. So those are your elements. They've now dissolved. So now your gross consciousness is no longer supported, and they dissolve. Okay. So that's the consciousnesses we're aware. That's our, all our sense consciousness quit working a while ago, but it's all our gross ways of thinking, all of our mental factors, all of that stuff goes away. We have an experience of white light. So this is because the winds, according to Buddhism, we have like 72,000 channels, and then wind is what goes through this, a very, very, very subtle wind. when those subtle winds enter the central channel, which is where our subtlemost mind abides, the reason why we aren't in touch with our subtle mind is it's caught in knots in these subtle channels. That's a whole nother, that's part of what Tantra is about, is being able to work with your channels. But the winds, you have, when you do the 9-round breathing, part of that is when we talk about it balances your winds. So it's getting familiar with this idea that you can actually control these subtle winds in your channels. And so there's a channel to the right, channel to the left, and then a central channel, and so you're trying to get your winds to go into the central channel to free the subtle mind. This happens naturally at death because it's a subtle mind that goes to the next life. It's not your sense conscious awarenesses, none of those things, it is that most subtle consciousness, or that's underneath all the other consciousness. That's what allows all the other consciousnesses to be aware. Then so you have this white appearance, and then you have a red appearance when the winds below the heart enter the central channel. And this causes an appearance of red light. When the winds meet at the heart, darkness occurs. And they talk about this, a moment of like you're swooning into unconsciousness. So for a brief span of time, you have no thought. So they call this the indestructible drop at the heart, which is what, that's the so-called container subtle mind. I think that's, the analogies don't really work. Language doesn't really work. But when when that opens up, so the subtle mind can go to the next body or whatever, it's released, you have the experience of clear light. And an extremely practiced yogi can use the appearance of clear light at the time of death to become enlightened, to realize emptiness and become enlightened. This is what you're trying to mimic in Tantra, is to have this occur so that you can manifest an illusory body. You don't have to wait. You're trying to have this experience of clear light so that you can use it to realize emptiness from within the state of bliss, and that creates the cause for a form body of a Buddha. So they say that Lama Tsongkhapa became enlightened at the time of death because he didn't want to practice Tantra as a monk. Because you can't practice Tantra, completion state Tantra as a monk, or a nun for that matter. So you can become enlightened at the moment of death if you're an extremely skilled yogi. And that Amitabha Rinpoche has a meditation on this where basically he just goes through, okay, you see your body gets heavy, then you have all your liquids drying up, then you have, the fire element just stops, and then your breath stops. Keep remembering the clear light. Look for the clear light. Don't forget the clear light's coming. Because then, if you recognize the clear light, for one thing, you're getting familiar with what its appearance is, and that will help you. Or maybe if you're an extremely experienced yogi, you will become enlightened. Then, as soon as the clear light of death ceases, you're entering a Bardo body, and the subtle, the mind, but you get your gross consciousnesses back. It just happens in reverse. The Bardo body only lasts a week. So if you haven't found a new place to live, you go through this again, but it's very brief. And you could only have 7 Bardo bodies. So within 49 days, you will have found your next rebirth. If you're going to the hell realms, I think it's spontaneous. As soon as you leave this body, you're born into a hell realm. Yeah, and it's lovely. And you wait till you see the description of the hell realms in here. It's not pretty. So if you don't, it gives you good motivation not to want a bad rebirth. Nothing else. You'll not want to go there. So the text, what's it called? This is like a little mini meditation on death. Leaving all, I must depart alone. But through not having understood this, I committed various kinds of evil for the sake of my friends and foes. My foes will become nothing. My friends will become nothing. I too will become nothing. Likewise, all will become nothing. Just like a dream. Whatever things I enjoy will become a memory. Whatever has passed will not be seen again. Even within this brief life, many friends and foes have passed. But whatever unbearable evil I have committed for them remains ahead of me. We carry our karma with us. The Tibetan Book of the Dead. That's the book I was trying to think of. They also that has a description of all these Bardo beings, kind of stuff. And what would happen is when someone's on their deathbed, family members would go get the local monk or ordained person, and they come and recite the Tibetan Book of the Dead to try to help the person, their mind to just, this is just normal. Don't freak out. Because the mind at the moment of death is what is the cause of a seed to ripen for your rebirth, a throwing karma. So you want to be kind of at peace. So this is why developing the mind of equanimity, doesn't matter, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. I want to choose to respond in a positive way. So like when you're dying, that positive way is, helping your family deal with your death, and not worrying about them. You don't want to be disturbed about worrying about your family members. You want to feel like, okay, they're on their own. They'll be okay. I've done my job, whatever. Or just the fact that it's time you have to let go. That you don't want to build their attachment, and you don't want to encourage your own attachment. It's like, you want to look forward to the next adventure. So, but it's had a point. So the more familiar you are with equanimity, the more you've practiced that, really trying not to be reactive to the feeling of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, that will help you at the time of death. Questions?
I have a question, Venerable Tendron.
Okay, no.
So what happens if you're unable to leave your attachments behind, and or is that like a given that it's gonna just not be there at the time that you need to take another body.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand the question. So what happens if you're not able to leave your attachments behind, blah, blah, blah? Is that correct?
Yes.
Then you're just a normal samsaric being.
Okay.
Just it just means that, you know, that attachment will kind of have some force in your looking for a new body. You know, because as soon as you die, you don't remember your past life. So you're no longer attached. People who they say that beings that have I don't know even how to put it, obsessive maybe attachment towards their loved ones can get stuck as spirits. And they hover around you, you know, for maybe forever. I don't know. You know, that it's you know, that the existence of spirits is due to extreme attachment. And it can also be extreme aversion. You know, you haunt your enemies kind of thing, you know. So I'm serious. So this is, you know, so, but that's the extreme. I don't even know what that would look like. I don't know, you know, I'm sure I've experienced it because I've probably been there, but, you know, I don't know what that means. But our level of attachment, the kind of experiences we have, are just part of what keeps us stuck in samsara, you know. So it won't be surprising if you can't, but you will suffer more, you know, and your family will suffer more if they see that you're clinging to this life. I mean, this is why they recommend families, you know, to kind of be able to, you know, let your loved one know it's okay. I'm going to be okay. You can go now. Because a lot of people are still clinging to staying here, you know, because they're worried about you. So it's, you know, so it's good to just, we're all fine. We're going to be fine. Not, you know, but if we're hysterical and weeping and all that stuff, it just increase their attachment to staying. And that just prolongs suffering. So the Tibetan tradition, they encourage anybody die alone. Get those monks in, let them recite prayers. Keep your family members out because it will be harder for you. Yeah.
So if you die a slow, painful death,
You will be exhausting a really negative karma.
like that for me is the bigger fear than dying.
Of course, that's what most, yeah, we're scared of the pain.
I'm scared of, yeah, the painful death, the long. So I guess what would the ideal state of mind be while
It's
you're
just
going through that?
you're rejoicing that you're well, you're probably eliminating a hell realm rebirth. You know, you're experiencing it as a human, you know, and you know, and you won't have to redo that particular seed, you know. So it's, you know, so having that mind of going, this is temporary, because it is, you know, this will end, you know. Not getting attached to it shouldn't be painful, you know. That's that thing of equanimity. Oh, so this is what it's going to be like. We have to practice that a lot. And we need to remember that just because our body is suffering, I mean, you know, that we're in pain, doesn't mean necessarily that our mind is agitated. That takes skill, obviously. Again, it's due to developing that equanimity that you can handle whatever is happening. You know, so obviously for most of us, it would be an up and down experience, you know, that you might be able to keep your mind like that. But this is the thing about developing your focus. You know, and people who have chronic pain find meditation very helpful because they concentrate their focus, and that can help them either not focus on the parts that hurt and focus on the parts that don't hurt, or focus on the parts that hurt and see how it changes. You know, the pain changes, you know, because one spot will hurt and then it doesn't, and then another spot will hurt. You know, it's just getting sort of intrigued by the impermanence of even pain, you know. So it's this, and then the self-grasping part of us, just really this idea of trying, if you've met the Dharma, that where you can think, well, this is a very negative seed ripening, good, I'm glad to be done with it, blah, 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 and this will end. But being in pain is not a guarantee you're going to go to a bad rebirth. It's how we respond to it. And nobody's saying you have to like pain. Remember that's, disliking, liking, no big deal. Craving to be rid of it, craving to have more of it is a big deal. So learning how to respond to pain with an attitude that goes, thank goodness it's temporary. It's just, is better than, I can't deal with it. Even though we'll have moments of it.
So am I understanding you correctly? You're saying it all comes down to your consciousness.
It's what state of mind you have at the time of death. That is a condition for our karmic seeds to ripen. This is why it's so good to develop a mind that's is in a positive state all the time. Because that means likely that a good seed will ripen. Because it's a condition for that. It's not a guarantee. It's just that, it's a good condition for that. That's why you don't want to be grasping. You don't want to be attacked, all that stuff. But we, hey, if we're still in samsara, we need some more practice, But it is, it's the moment of this is why our habits are so important. If we have a habit of being angry when things don't go our way, then the likelihood is at the time of death, we'll have that. So we want to develop.
So is it to develop your state of consciousness into a pure state, basically, right?
Well, to a wholesome state.
What?
To a wholesome state. If you can think about love and compassion for others, one of your thoughts can be, if you're in really a lot of pain, is to think, wow, and I'm not the only one who has to experience this. I'm gonna have more compassion for others when they're in a state of pain. So it's a wholesome state. It's a positive state of mind, not one that's thinking, this isn't fair, I should have gone to a different doctor, whatever, all that kind of stuff that, or we can even have, we can have really demented thoughts, can't we? Just sort of like, well, good, I hope my kids suffer because I'm mad at them.
So how does a wholesome state differ from a purity?
It's just less pure. Until you're a Buddha, it's not going to be perfectly pure. There's going to be ignorance present. You have to remove your ignorance to have a pure mind. And right now, if we're in samsara, we have a mind that's influenced by ignorance. And ignorance is the ignorance that doesn't understand how things actually exist. Okay, we're out of time tonight. So again, this book I'm using is the Lamrim Outlines by Karen, K-A-I-N.
Could you put that back up on the screen? I didn't catch it when you first put it up.
You can take a picture of it.
Oh yeah, can I?
You just take a picture of it.
I wish I was smart.
I wish I thought of those things too. You should have seen me after I took down the altar of my teacher and then had to put it back up. I was cleaning it and it didn't occur to me to take a picture of it because you think you'll remember, right?
As you wouldn't.
No, and I didn't.
Oh my goodness. Is your teacher upset with you?
No, because,
Before you close, can I just ask you one question?
do I have to have this open?
Do we have a chance to get into a state of purity?
That's what this whole process is about.
Okay.
Everybody can become enlightened.
So you classify purity, enlightenment?
That's what it means.
Okay.
An enlightened mind has no impurity. Okay. So let's dedicate our efforts at understanding. You don't have to agree. You're just trying to understand. You're just trying to learn different points, so. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may we quickly attain the state of Guru Buddhas and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that not arisen rise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way that I may follow their perfect example. It's this first verse. Because of all the merits of the 3 times created by me and all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and other sentient beings, may there be no wars, famines, disease, quarreling, fighting, or unhappy minds. May there be great prosperity, and may everything needed be easily obtained. May all the human beings in the world be guided by spiritual leaders teaching only Dharma, and may everyone enjoy the happiness of Dharma. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. I mean, one of the things you can do at the time of death is just recite mantras. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losam father and sons, along lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now, holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice. You wore the armor of patience that's never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make request, while striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for other living beings who suddenly departed to peace, what a great loss.
Nevertheless,
Through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the 3 jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.